To you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Daring Dialogues. I am your host, Shantae Charles. I hope that everything is going well with you this morning. Had a little bit of technical difficulty, but I believe I have worked it out, so we are not too late coming in. You know, I like to be on time. I believe on being on time is a sign that you care about other people and you care about other people's time. So we're going to jump right in today. We have three books that we are in. We have been talking about the Entrepreneur's Playbook, strategies, tips, and techniques to build a successful business by people who have built successful businesses. And then we have Wealth Can't Wait, avoiding the seven wealth traps, implementing the seven business pillars, and completing a life audit today. This is written from the perspective of men who are in commercial real estate, and it's been actually really, really helpful. So I hope that you have been getting the nuggets. I hope that you've been applying them to your life. I know that in the application, my husband and I have seen some radical changes, especially with this book, Wealth Can't Wait, and the other book, Your Score by Anthony Davenport, which we finished last season. And we're going to start out with the story of food as promised. We're going to talk a little bit and learn about the history of our food. I believe it's important to understand what we are eating, the history of it, what we're putting inside of our bodies. I am happy to report again that I am down another pound. And I've been following a really simple plan, and it's been exciting. Drinking water, right? No carbs after breakfast. All right, those have been two of the main things. And of course, getting some exercise. Try to get about 20 minutes of exercise a day at least. And the weight is coming down in the midsection. Let me be specific about that. So, we started talking about the history of food. And we started with how we are hardwired for nutrients, and how the early people who were kind of practicing and learning how to take care of their food thousands of years ago, right? They were learning how to use fire, right, to cook their food. They were learning how to preserve their food. We are, of course, much more farther along than that. I want to talk a little bit about how meat eating affected the brain and how cooking changed the world. And then we're going to go into social and religious customs quickly about food. And then we're going to go to the nuts section, and we're going to talk about nuts and seeds. Nuts and seeds. All right. How meat eating affected the brain. Eating more meat was another crucial dietary change that provided further fuel for the expansion and evolution of the human brain. And as our ancestors' brains developed, so too did their ability to innovate. Developing tools with cutting edges gave groups the ability to hunt cooperatively, enabling them to bring down large game or large animals instead of scavenging the kills of other predators. So, one way that the consumption of meat changed was in how much meat they were able to acquire for themselves, right? Without having to go behind another animal that had killed an animal, and they were just kind of picking up the scraps of what was left over. Because they developed these tools, they were able to go and hunt directly for themselves and get more meat. So this in turn added more meat to their diet. All right. This progression occurred over a long period of time beginning with the use of basic scraper tools around 2.6 million years ago, which allowed meat to be butchered, to the creation of thrusting spears, the earliest of which date approximately back 500,000 years. How did cooking change the world? Once humans had learned how to harness fire, they began to cook their food, a development that heralded the beginning of a love affair with culinary experimentation, commentary, and eventually the art of entertaining. Most importantly, however, cooking unlocked different nutrients in certain foods by breaking down the proteins, carbohydrates, and fats to make them easier to digest. It also killed germs that cause food poisoning and even eradicated poisons from some plants. Only when a potato is cooked, for example, does it release its starches in a form that can be effectively absorbed by the human gut. It is believed that all of these factors began to contribute to our biological development in many different ways. Cooked food led to smaller jaws and smaller intestines, while increased calorie consumption led to bigger brains. But the changing relationship between humans and their food supply was also the catalyst for social and technological advances. Expanding the food trade. The great variety of spices available hints at the trade routes that were being established at various times in the Roman Empire. The conquest of Egypt in 30 BCE, for example, resulted in a flow of exotic spices such as pepper and cumin from India, which we readily associate with curry. I've been eating lots of cumin and turmeric lately. It's very helpful for the digestive system. And Scythium from North Africa. It was not long before this early globalization of food accelerated beyond the wildest dreams of the ancient Romans. Remember, as we talked about in our study on theology, many people were talking in that book, they were talking about how the gospel would have been traveling and going along these same trade routes as people were doing business, like the Apostle Paul. They would have been traveling these trade routes into these different areas. And so it's interesting because as food trade expands, it opens up pathways and gateways for just business and trade altogether, which also open up trade routes that the apostles and other disciples would have been following to share and spread the gospel. By the time the Venetian merchant Marco Polo began his explorations in the 13th century, the flow of goods between East and West along the network known as the Silk Road was already hundreds of years old and the migration of culinary traditions already inevitable. Some sources claim that the noodles of China and the pasta of Italy may both have originated from the Arab technique of making dried pasta from durum wheat flour, knowledge that would travel eastward to China, Japan, and Korea, but also westward to the Mediterranean. A similar exchange transpired between the Old World and the New World when potatoes, tomatoes, cocoa, and tobacco were introduced to Europe, Africa, and Asia, while in the other direction, olives, rice, wheat, cattle were imported to Central and South America. And not only foodstuffs made the journey. Cooking styles, for example, changed dramatically in Latin America, where, before the arrival of the Spanish, frying was virtually unknown, but later became commonplace. So let's talk a little bit about social and religious customs, and then we will go into the first section of this book, which is nuts and seeds. The principle of social or religious groups eating together, whether as entire communities, members of a particular clique, or families, provides a practical approach to communal food preparation. Yet, it is also a way of bonding, providing a forum for sharing information, oral history, giving advice, and reinforcing particular beliefs. Hence, things that we do today, like communion, in terms of a religious custom, right? Or the social custom of family reunions. Some of us have not been to a family reunion in years. But if you've ever been to a family reunion, right, that is the time that you get to meet the extended parts of your family. You get to meet your younger generations. You get to meet your older generations. You get to talk about your family history, your family lineage. You get to share all of these social things, right? And especially if you have family that lives all over the country, it's an even more interesting experience because you might have family that lives in the north, you might have family that lives in the west, you might have family that lives in the east or the upper east coast, and then you may have family that lives in the south. And so you're all bringing your different experiences regionally from around the country. Or you might have a very close knit family that maybe your family never left the area that your forefathers lived in, right? And so everybody may know your family because of your family name, and maybe 200 to 300 of you all live in the same region and you've never moved. Which these days, I don't know. There's still a couple of families that I know like that personally, but most of the families I know, they have pretty much spread out over the United States, right? So this provides that communal time, that social gathering to eat, provides a practical approach to community. I know, for example, in my family, most of the men in my family cook, and they cook very well. Many of them are five-star chefs. And so when someone feeds me, I am always comparing their food many times in my head to the food I've eaten all my life with five-star chefs, which is really not a fair comparison, but what can I say? All right? And the men in my family cook very, very well. Like they cook the seafood, the steak, the ribs, the chicken, like everything you can think of, they cook it really, really well. So as a person who has grown up with that, food for me is a symbol of community. It's a symbol of gathering, right? Most of us tend to not go out to eat with people we don't like. Okay, let me sip my orange juice. Right? If someone invites you out to eat and you don't really care for them personally, you're probably going to decline the invitation. That's just realistically, right? So, food is another way of bonding, providing a forum for sharing information and oral history, giving advice, and reinforcing particular beliefs. In the Middle Ages, the Christian church preached the importance of eating at regular times to discourage gluttony and reinforcing a sense of discipline. In ancient China, too, eating excessively was frowned upon, and at the dinner table, children were instructed to eat only until they were three-quarters full. Now, also, if you're like me, I don't like to eat until I am super, super full. The few times that I have done it, I have felt really, really bad the next day. And let's just say me in my restroom had some disagreements. So I try to eat, and when I feel myself getting full, that's when I stop. But other people, other cultures, other family gatherings, people might want to just gorge on the food. That might be a family thing that they do to see how much each other can eat. All right? So we're talking about customs here. Business deals were cemented in the coffee houses of 17th century London. Gossip was shared, marriages were planned, and domestic manipulation was plotted over afternoon tea in the polite society of 18th century Europe. Political alliances were forged over dinner in the 1950s communist Beijing. Criminals and their victims found reconciliation, and communities brokered peace in the Middle Eastern tradition of Mumlalaha, or Mumalaha, excuse me, Mumalaha, breaking bread, a practice echoed in the bipartisan breaking bread begun in 1987 in the United States Senate prior to the presidential State of the Union address. Meal times have functioned in this way since the earliest times and continue to exert a powerful influence in many societies. In France, lunch is rarely consumed on the go or as street food. Employees actually take a whole hour for lunch and go out to eat. In many Southeast Asian cultures, street food is an essential element of daily life. Eating together in public places is a fundamental part of seasonal and religious celebrations around the world. And one example is Japan's custom of hanami, picnicking under blossoming cherry trees every spring. At a domestic level, modern psychologists say that children who eat meals with their parents at least a few times a week are much more likely to eat healthy, have fewer problems with drugs and alcohol, and perform better at school than children who do not have regular meal times with one or both parents. Our ancestors clearly knew the powerful effects of sharing food. Now, I grew up in the hood, and therefore, in our family, you didn't eat a whole lot of fast food. Number one, because you couldn't afford to. But number two, your mother was usually doing the cooking, and sometimes she was doing the cooking several times a week, right? So I grew up, even though I lived in the hood, I grew up, everybody is coming to the table at a certain time. Your mother has cooked. You better be at the table. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you better eat everything that was put on your plate. You better eat it. Now I'll tell you about me. All right, I can't talk about anyone else. I hated white rice. I absolutely hated it. To this day, I don't eat a whole lot of white rice. But I hated it back then. And my mother would usually cook white rice with almost every meal because it was inexpensive. So I would get into the habit of pretending to eat my rice. I would stuff my cheeks with it, and I would go to the restroom, and I would spit it out into the toilet, and I would flush it. And I was doing this for a while. I was getting away with it too. Like, I would eat everything else on the plate except that white rice. But we had to clean our plate, so I figured out how I was going to clean my plate without eating something that I disliked. This was before the parenting methods we have now, where we don't force children to eat things that they don't like. That was not the case in the 70s, okay? So I will never forget being humped over the stool, spitting out my rice, doing what I normally do, which is flushing it down the toilet, and feeling a tap on my shoulder. At that moment, I knew I was in trouble. She didn't spank me, thank God. She just said, "You're only going to be able to eat rice, and I'm only going to fix you rice until you eat it." Now, in today's culture, that would be seen as a form of child abuse. But in the culture back then, it was, you're going to respect your parents and you're going to eat what your parents put before you. So, on a domestic level, right? There are certain things that happen in your mealtime. My mom finally asked me why I was not eating the rice. I said, "I don't like it. It has no taste to it. It's blah. It didn't have any seasoning." So eventually what my mom did was she started cooking yellow rice. And from then on, me and yellow rice have had a love relationship, a fellowship divine, because it has seasoning to it. It has taste to it, right? So there are ways that parents can find a way around some of their children's food preferences. I didn't say food allergies because we don't want to make children eat something that's going to kill them. But there are ways that parents can find a way around food preferences. But I find this interesting that the children who are eating with their family, according to research, are more likely to eat healthier, have fewer problems with drugs and alcohol, and perform better at school than children who do not have regular meal times with one or both of their parents. So you're getting the nutrients in, and usually at the table, there's communication happening and there's conversation happening, right? And so if you haven't been doing that as a parent, try it. Get back to having actual dinner at a table with your children and having the conversation at the table this year. So let's talk now about nuts and seeds. Nuts and seeds were the perfect food for our ancient hunter-gatherer ancestors. Considering the edible kernels in a hard outer shell, nuts were particularly nourishing and sustaining, providing fat, carbohydrates, protein, and fiber in varying quantities depending on the species. Unlike roots and tubers, which required digging out, nuts were easy to gather, kept well, and could be moved from one place to another without great difficulty or loss. Like many other animal species, the earliest humans ate whatever they could find growing readily available. Over the centuries, they steadily increased the knowledge of which plants were most beneficial to eat, which ones were the ones that they needed to avoid, and which provided them the most energy. These early humans were observant, often ingenious, and were actually aware of their surroundings. They noticed that nut tree harvests varied from year to year, and also discovered that the trees growing deep in the shady forest interior were usually less productive than the ones that grew around the forest edge. This knowledge, coupled with an increasingly sophisticated variety of tools, eventually inspired them to clear away the undergrowth of smaller trees in order to foster greater nut harvesting, giving rise to the first beginnings of what we now call cultivation. Hunting and organized crop raising came later. So next week we're going to get into the one of the types of nuts. We're going to talk about almonds next week. And then I may have some surprise news for you all. We'll see. We shall see. All right. Let's get into Wealth Can't Wait by David Osborne and Paul Morris. Those of you who want to screenshot the book can do so. All right. We're talking about habits for building wealth. Just want to review the first two concepts. Habit number 1 was about living life by design, knowing where you are going. Habit number 2 is making business decisions based on solid fundamentals. And today, habit number 3, stick with what you know and drill deep. Stick with what you know and drill deep. Want to say good morning to each and every one of you in the chat box. Good morning, Lady Latoya. Good morning, Pastor Ben. Good morning, Prophet Jonathan. Good morning, Husband Rock. Good morning to those of you who are on YouTube. You can go ahead and share this video out as we move into our next subject. Habit number 3, sticking with what you know and drilling deep. Now, there are some of us who are blessed to know more than one thing. So, it may be more of a challenge for you to dig deep while you're trying to hone your skills across the board, right? For some of us, that takes a lot of years of practice to hone your skills across the board. One of the things I decided early on in my life, in my career, is that I would not be a one-trick pony. Number 1, I refuse to be a one-trick pony because God has given me more than one gift. And to whom much is given, much is required, which means I have to spend time honing and practicing in various areas of life in order to be skilled and good and excellent at it. If your only gift is singing, right, you could spend a whole lot more time honing that particular skill and drilling deep. If your skill is cooking, right? You can spend hours upon hours honing that skill and drilling deep. But it becomes a little bit more difficult the more gifts that God has given to you, or the more skills that God has given to you. You do have a greater responsibility to hone your skills across the board. But you can do it. So I'm encouraging you, if you have more than one skill, all right, make sure you are charting a course this year to actually work on all your skills. So if you can sing, if you can play an instrument, if you also are a writer, start planning your year to figure out how you're going to be honing those multiple skills that you have. But the key here is sticking with what you know and drilling deep. Warren Buffett said this: what an investor needs is the ability to correctly evaluate selected businesses. You don't have to be an expert on every company or even many companies. You only have to be able to evaluate companies within your circle of competence. The size of that circle is not very important. Knowing its boundaries, however, is vital. So here's an example. This is just an example. If I am a person who say I like to cook, right? I might take my knowledge of cooking, and I might see what food companies are on the public trading market. Why? Why would I look for food companies to invest in? Because my skill is cooking. So I'm paying more attention to brands. I'm paying more attention to products. I'm paying more attention to spices. I'm paying more attention to goods in the food market than I would be in the technology market. Does that make sense? Right? He's giving you a key here. Stick with what you know and drill deep. So if I know all of these things about food and products and companies and who I want to buy from, and I can actually start looking at what companies and what products are doing good on the market that I might want to invest in. Why would I want to invest in them? Because they're things and products that I use all the time anyway, right? So I already have a knowledge of what the product is and how it's doing by my own personal use of it. He says here, if you want to build wealth, get really good at something that generates revenue and stick with it. Remember, great wealth is not built by diversifying into a million different things. This means, in addition to having a diversified portfolio, if you want to build wealth, get really good at something that generates revenue and stick with it. For us, that is real estate. Real estate is the gift that keeps on giving. Real estate is where we buy, sell, and hold to build wealth. Our target rate of return is about 15% a year. If you earn 15% on your nest egg year after year, your money doubles in about 4.8 years. And then that doubled nest egg doubles again in the same 4.8 years. In addition to the return, each year we pay off more of the mortgage, adding principal growth. Compare that to the long-term rate of a diversified portfolio of assets, and you'll see why we say don't diversify into a million things. That said, once you build wealth, it can make sense to consult with a guest financial planner and diversify some of the wealth you have built. To hear from some of the best financial planners, you can visit www.wealth.org. All right, that's another resource that you can look at past this program today. If it's wealth you're after, build big where you can make a difference. Stick with what you know and then drill deep into that particular market. Habit number 4. Habit number 4. And I'm going to put a plug here because there's an opportunity for you to learn through 2 of my programs. One is in February and one is in March. You can email me at reachshantae@gmail.com. reachshantae, SHANTAE @gmail.com to learn more about this habit number 4 that he's going to tell you about. Habit number 4, earn more by learning more. Earn more by learning more. Learning is the beginning of wealth. There's a quote, I don't know if anybody knows who said it first, so I think it's an anonymous quote, but the quote says this: if you want to hide something from a black man, put it in a book. Now, some people can be offended by that quote, or you can be motivated by that quote by actually increasing your learning like we're doing here every single morning. Learning is the beginning of wealth. Jim Rohn said that. Earn more by learning more. In the U.S. economy, you get paid for your skills, or you should. Sure, some people have trust funds, but for the most part, we earn by selling our skills. So whether you're working a 9 to 5 or whether you're an entrepreneur, you are still earning by selling your skills. Keep developing your skills to keep growing your income. It also helps if you love what you do. If you are resistant to learning, however, you will miss out on new possibilities. I've had several people inbox me and say, hey, I'm using the principles that you taught us in season 4 concerning your score about your credit. I haven't had to see a credit counselor because I heard what you told us to do. We read it. Everybody heard it. Now I'm applying it, and now I'm seeing the increase. Now I'm seeing my credit score go up. Now that I've gotten that secured credit card, I'm starting to see a change in my credit score. I wasn't a credit counselor. I just simply picked up a book from someone who is an expert in the industry and gave you the tools that you needed to increase your score. All right? Some of us have some super awesome testimonies to share around that, but we're going to get to them. We're not going to do them today. All right? But what he shared, because he's an expert in the field and he had an insider's perspective, what he shared is causing people's score to increase. Not by like 2 or 3 points, but by 10 points, 20 points, 30 points. All right? So the writer here is very to the point. If you are resistant to learning, you will miss out on new possibilities. Excuse me. He says, when his mom washes out Ziploc baggies to reuse them, and David tells her she can afford new ones, she tells him that she is too old to change. Or take the guy who hates his job but diligently goes to the cubicle every day to do what he hates under the same depressing fluorescent lights and says, well, at least it's a paycheck. Children, on the other hand, have no problem with change and possibility. David took his daughter Bella to an aquarium recently, and she was super excited to see all the fish. David, on the other hand, had to work on becoming excited. Children have an innate enthusiasm for life and for anything new. This type of enthusiasm opens the door to new possibilities and expands our lives. If you bring passion to what you do, you are bound to earn more. If you bring passion to what you do, you are bound to earn more. You have to ask yourself, what do you have a passion for? What do you have a passion for? Learning is a choice, and so is earning. What you know now was likely just enough to get you to exactly where you are right now. It's unlikely to get you much further. There is magic in learning, as he says. I don't say magic, but there is anointing in learning. I'll say that. There is life in learning. Jesus said, "Take my yoke upon you and learn of me." We can choose to learn our entire lives, and if we do, we are choosing, get this, we are choosing youth, vigor, growth, and possibility. Oh my. How do you look so young? How do you stay so young? Why do people think that you're somebody's daughter? Why do people card you? Because I like learning. I think it's a beautiful thing. But I don't just like learning, I like to apply what I've learned. Okay? Yes, this book is preaching all the way through. So, you want to keep your youth, you want to keep your energy, you want to keep your vigor, you want to continue to grow, you want to be open to possibility, go out and learn something. When we got into sales, he said, and ran our own businesses where learning is most closely related to earning, we noticed that what we learned and then applied to our world created results almost immediately. Learn, apply. Learn plus application. Learning plus application equals results. Somebody put that math equation up there. Learning plus application equals results. The more you learn, the less apt you are to sin. I can agree with that. The more you learn and apply, the less apt you are to sin. Learning plus application equals results. That means it's also important what I learn, because what I learn and what I apply may not get me the results I was looking for. It might get me negative results. So I want to make sure that what I'm learning is good, and then I want to apply it in order to get the immediate results. For instance, when we learned how to prospect for business and then actually did it, we immediately made more money. When we learned to present better and then we actually did it, we made more money. When we learned how to hire great people and then applied ourselves, we made better hires and our businesses got better very quickly. When we learned how to manage financials better and read financial statements, we ran a better business. With every insight we picked up and applied to our lives, we created a better outcome and a better income. And in business as entrepreneurs, we found that knowledge can be put to work at an amazing pace. Knowledge leads directly to a financial outcome. That is one of the reasons that the entrepreneurs who never quit learning build so much wealth. They keep learning so much that they begin to outpace their peers who take less risk than they do and receive less reward and are therefore not required to learn so much. But if you keep learning, you will keep earning. If you keep learning, you will keep earning. If you keep learning, you will keep earning. And this goes into, this is not in the book, but this goes into other areas. If you keep learning, you will keep earning trust. All right. I woke up this morning to a whole bunch of ping, 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 ping on my phone. And I was like, what is going on? So I look over at my phone and I see people congratulating me. And I'm like, who's congratulating me? What I did? What did I do, Jesus? But someone had tapped me to run a group. Now, if you don't understand how Facebook groups work, when someone taps you to run a group, especially if that group is really popular online, it can open you up to other opportunities. So this morning, when I woke up, I found out I was being congratulated because someone tapped me to be a co-runner of a very popular Facebook group online, which to me is an honor because, again, It's something I like to do. It's a group I'm already using. It's a group I'm already interested in. It's a group I'm already contributing to. But I now have the honor of being an admin for that group. All right. So what does that do? That opens that opens other people up to say, hey, what is it about this person that got tapped to run this group? And then that leads to more inquiry, that leads to more questions, that leads to more, hey, what else do you do besides run this group? So if you keep learning, you will keep earning. You earn opportunities, you can earn income, you earn trust, all right? Because people see that you're not just kind of sitting on or resting on your past accomplishments. Many of us have things we've accomplished in the past, but we want to keep growing, we want to keep learning, we want to keep opening ourselves up to be available for God's growth and opportunity in our life and his possibility. The same, he says, is true with wealth. Attend a seminar, analyze a deal, or read or listen to a book on wealth. It doesn't matter what you do, budget some of your time and dedicate it to learning about wealth. Budget your time and dedicate it to learning about wealth. We have been doing this now, believe it or not. We have been doing these wealth teachings now for almost 3 years. Almost 3 years. We've been on this topic every single Friday as God has given us grace to do it. So the more you learn, the more you earn. Make it a priority in your life. We're going to the last book today that is specifically for entrepreneurs, the Entrepreneur's Playbook. And even if you are not yet an entrepreneur, but you're thinking about it, you're contemplating it, this is a good place to start. So, the first principle we learned in this book, we talked about finding a marketplace challenge that needs to be solved or improved. Very similar to the concept of finding what you're good at and digging deeper. Takeaways from that particular topic were: don't begin with an idea. Identify a need in the market. Don't begin with an idea. Identify a need in the market. What is something you see in the market that you're in right now that could be done better? Number 2, make sure you are committed to it. Number 3, make sure you are confident of the opportunity. And number 4, is the market need sustainable? Can it go beyond your idea? 5, what is your contingency plan if the worst happens? So let's move to principle 2. Principle 2 is a better mousetrap is not enough. A better mousetrap is not enough. The good news is that you have, or you are convinced, that you can come up with a product or service that can satisfy a big need in the marketplace, one that will solve a problem. The bad news is that creating a better mousetrap is not the end of the journey. It is just the beginning. As we saw with Principle 1, even if you have the proverbial better mousetrap, the world may not be the path directly to your door. The cliche is simply not true. You need to figure out a way to tell people what you have and to position your product or service in a way that you'll keep competition from eating you for lunch. The positioning and developing of your idea is as important as the idea itself. This is another lesson the writer says I learned the hard way. Let me tell you about it. We were convinced we had come up with a better mousetrap, specifically a better version of the drink Red Bull. We had experience in the beverage business, and we understood how to get the product into stores where there was growing shelf space for this kind of product. So if we gain even a small percentage of the shelf space, we could be very successful. Red Bull is loaded with caffeine, and it promised it will keep you going. Our product, Mercury Energy Drink, also had caffeine and it included ribose, which was another source of energy as well. We figured with ribose and a formula designed to supply the body with carbohydrates and replace fluids and sodium lost that we could fuse two categories. That we could fuse sports drinks like Gatorade with an energy drink like Red Bull into a new category that we would call sports energy. As we thought about what it would take to make Mercury successful, we had the following pluses going so far. Number one, we knew the beverage industry. Number two, the timing was right for a sports energy drink, given the awareness of the importance of working out and remaining hydrated. Three, we had the finances to launch and promote the product. So, why are people still drinking Red Bull and you've never heard of Mercury? It's primarily because of something we did not anticipate. A successful entrenched competitor has the ability to match a new competitor's price, eliminating the competitive advantage that comes with being less expensive. So, Red Bull began promoting its product with deals like buy one, get one, or BOGO. Most of us have heard of that. They were willing to take a hit to their margins to keep from ceding an inch of the shelf space for our product. Could we have come up with an alternative marketing approach? Sure. We could have spent large sums of money on advertising, getting celebrities to endorse the product, paying to gain shelf space near checkout counters in supermarkets and convenience stores, because you do realize that product placement is everything, right? Think about it this way. The second habit from Wealth Can't Wait. One moment. Habit number two. Habit number two is make business decisions based on solid fundamentals, Lady Kenyatta. All right. So, think about it this way. And I put this in this terms because most people know church, right? Or a lot of people do. I'll put it that way. Think about if you are registering for a conference, okay? And there are different registration prices. And those different registration prices give you different sorts of access to either events or to information or to courses or to people, right? Or think about if you are going to an event and you buy a table as opposed to buying a ticket. Your table, and depending on how much you paid for your table as a sponsor of an event, will put you closer to the front, right? So you can be seen or you can be photographed, whatever. People in this particular business, the food and beverage business, they actually pay for spots in that business. So when you go into a grocery store, all right, and they may have a whole basket of, say, Pringles potato chips, a whole bin of Pringles potato chips right when you come in the front door, that's not just by coincidence, all right? He's telling you that marketers pay for certain space in the grocery stores to make their products more visible to you. So if you're trying to figure out why do I want the specific product and I have to go searching around the store trying to find it, looking on every shelf, and I find what I want to eat all the way off in the back, somewhere off in the corner, or on the last shelf in the grocery store, you have your answer. All right? They pay to gain shelf space near the checkout counters in supermarkets and convenience stores. All right? So he asked the question, why didn't we pay this price? He said, creating Mercury wasn't our primary business. And while it would have been something we would have been proud of, it wouldn't be the end of the world if it never happened. So we turned our attention to something else. The lessons from our Mercury product were clear to us. Number one, you must be prepared for your competitor to change their market strategy and pricing in response to how you choose to market your product or service. Now, most people don't realize that this is happening and this is going on, and it's a frequent strategy. All right? Think about right now how many people are in certain business areas, certain business fields. So if I've been in a business area or field longer than someone else, I have more leeway to change my prices or offer discounts than the person who's just jumping into the market. That's what he's talking about. Number two, you must have financial staying power. What is he saying? Could he afford to continue to do all of these advertisings of this product? Could he afford to do it for a long period of time? Could he afford to pay celebrities for a long period of time to endorse the product until he could make a profit? If he couldn't do that, it would have been a bad investment. Number three, you must have a will to persevere. 5 Hour Energy did these things, and we were able to compete with Red Bull. And they were able to compete with Red Bull, where we were not. We decided to abandon Mercury and concentrate our energies and financing in developing Blue Buffalo pet food. When Blue Buffalo had its IPO and became a public company on July 22nd, 2015, we knew that we had made the right decision. So, let's stay with this concept of an example of what you should do. Two Babson students, Dinesh and his brother Danny, came up with a wonderful idea for a product, a longer lasting light bulb that saved energy and was specifically designed for warehouses and manufacturing plants. It really was superior to anything on the market, and they figured they could sell it for the same price as their competition. They came to me looking for affirmation that they had a terrific concept and were on their way to success. I told them it was a better mousetrap, but one I felt destined to fail in the marketplace. You're never going to build a company given the way you have positioned the product, I said. For one thing, it's going to be very difficult to get customers to switch light bulb suppliers. They're not going to accept on faith that yours lasts longer. They're going to tell you they're too busy to test it, and it will cost them money to try it. For another, the moment you do win a contract, someone may come out with a similar bulb. Yes, I know you have a patent, but I'm here to tell you the competition will find a way to differentiate their product from yours or simply copy you and wait for you to sue, making money while you are in litigation. In either case, they're going to undercut you on price and you won't win another contract. Not surprisingly, Dinesh and Danny were extremely dejected after I delivered my critique. However, there is a way around this problem. Go to all the plants and factories, explain what you have, and offer to replace their existing bulbs with yours for free. So give them the replacements for free so that they will have a contract with you. You do the work. You physically swap out the bulbs they have with yours, and you don't charge them a thing. How you make money? Simply ask for a significant percentage of the energy savings. Most companies will go along with that because you'll be lowering their electric bill at no cost to them, so they're not going to object to sharing the savings. Dinesh and Danny took my approach, and today, Think Light is a successful company. Dinesh and Danny were featured in 2015 in Inc. magazine's 30 Under 30 Extremely Successful Entrepreneurs, and they are because they dug a moat around their product. How to build a moat. The phrase in the subhead above is borrowed from the man who may be the greatest investor right now living, Warren Buffett. It's his shorthand way of referring to a business's ability to create and keep a competitive advantage in order to protect profits and market share over the long term. In business, I look for economic castles protected by unbreachable moats. Warren Buffett. Let me give you an example of how this works, courtesy of Investopedia. Suppose you have decided to make your fortune by running a lemonade stand. You realize that if you buy your lemons in bulk once a week instead of every morning, you can reduce costs by 30%, making you able to undercut the prices of competing lemonade stands. Your low prices lead to an increase in the number of customers buying lemonade from you. As a result, you see an increase in profit. It probably wouldn't take very long for your competitors to notice your method and start using it themselves, which is what people tend to do. Therefore, in a short period of time, your large profits would erode and the local lemonade industry would return to normal conditions again. However, suppose you develop and patent a juicing technology that allows you to get 30 more percent juice out of a lemon. This would have the same effect of reducing your cost per glass of lemonade by 30%. This time, your competitors have no way of duplicating your method, at least not for the foreseeable future, as they scramble to come up with a juicing technology of their own. This is the kind of protection or moat you want to have for your idea. Moat building 201. It's typical in talking about competitive advantage to first define what it is. Many academics would say it is essentially any factor that allows you to make more money than your competitors who are offering a similar product or service, and only then do they discuss ways to protect your edge. I think that's wrong. If you aren't thinking about how you're going to create a moat around your competitive advantage from the very beginning, you run the risk of wasting a lot of time and effort. If the students who had come up with better industrial light bulbs hadn't thought about their moat installing the bulbs for free, they wouldn't have gone out into the marketplace and might very well have promptly been undercut on their price. So, you need to be thinking about what kind of moat you're going to have to protect your competitive advantage from day one. Start by asking yourself, how are you different? How are you different? If you run a coaching business, a consulting business, how are you different? All right? Just think about it. And then be able to communicate that difference to your audience. It's one of the most fundamental questions in business. How are you going to position your product, your service, your idea so it will be successful? Everyone agrees how vitally important positioning is, but then they promptly fall off track. They instantly start rattling off ways they can position their product or service, assuming that the positioning is going to stay the same forever. That is silly. Your positioning may and probably will change over the course of your product's life cycle as competition and economic conditions change. Right now, we're in a government shutdown. So everyone right now has christened themselves an entrepreneur. Amen? So, what is going to make you, who may have been in business for many years, almost a decade, some of us, what's going to position you from being different than everybody who comes up and says, I have a business or I have a side hustle? You have to think about that. All right? How you position yourself and how you position your product is up to you. That said, the following ideas, which are not meant to be all inclusive, can help you jolt your thinking. 5 ways that you can position yourself to be better. Number 1, becoming a low price provider. This positioning should be self-explanatory, but extremely dangerous in the long run, unless you plan to become the Walmart of your industry. The problem with taking this approach is that someone else, because they found out how you do what you do, only cheaper, all right, can always undercut your price. So it's not just about your pricing. What is your experience connected to your pricing? Number two, high price, high quality provider. That means that you are the best or one of the best in your class. You can find examples everywhere you look. Gucci, Lamborghini, right? Those would be considered the best in their class. Fastest. Maybe you're not the highest priced, maybe you're not the lowest price, but you are the fastest. All right? Sure, car manufacturers talk about going from 0 to 60 all the time, but that isn't the only place where you position your product around speed. You can have the fastest search engine. You can have the fastest method of doing a particular thing. If you are selling to someone who is interested in growth, promoting your product as the fastest could be the key. But you actually have to back up your promotion. Like you actually have to be the fastest. Number four, more convenient and user friendly. You could provide one-stop shops as big box stores do. The doc in the box walk-in medical centers or companies that offer 24-hour access to their order takers and customer service providers are two other examples. All right? Online stores are big because people can go to their computer, get online and shop at any time of the day or night. A feature that I used over the holidays that really impressed me was Old Navy. Old Navy has an online store, right? But they also have a feature where if the product is near you, you can shop for it the night before, which is what I did. There was something I needed for an event, and I found it on Old Navy, and I was like, I need this for tomorrow to wear tomorrow. So I went on their site, I bought it the night before, and I found out that they had it in store and that I could pick it up when the store opened. I was like, oh, this is bomb.com. So I bought the product, got up in the morning before my event, got to the store. The first moment it opened, as soon as I walked in the store, all I had to do was go to the counter. They already had what I needed bagged. All I had to do was take my bag and walk out of the store and go. That is convenient and user friendly. And every store does not have that. All right. Number five, a better experience. So you can have someone offering you the same product. Take coaching, for example. You can have someone offering the same product. They can be a lower price, right? They can be fast. They can be the way that you get into their system can be convenient and user friendly. But if they're not teaching you anything that you don't already know, or they're regurgitating someone else's information, they don't have a original product, or the experience overall is bad because maybe the person doesn't have the experience behind what they're trying to sell you or teach you, all right? Or they have a very bad disposition. You just had a bad experience. So number five is a better experience. Going to a minor league baseball game can be more entertaining than going to a major league baseball game where you might be cut off from the players and very little happens between the innings. At a minor league game, the players are accessible, they readily sign autographs, the fans are often allowed to run the bases after the game, and there are contests and other activities in between almost every inning. Other examples of this are Home Depot and Lowe's. They may seemingly stock everything, but nothing beats the local hardware store for service and good advice. So you You might have the advantage in an industry because you give people a better experience. All right? So just think about that. You might be the one giving the better experience. No, you may not have the lowest price, right? Or you may not be the fastest in your service. Or you may have some specific methods for registration. But if you give a 5-star experience, people will return to you because they will recognize I got a quality experience, not just somebody who hurried me or rushed me through a process and I really didn't get what I was looking for. All right. So we're going to stop there. I know I'm over my time. We will come back to this topic, Lord willing, next week. We'll continue to talk about a better mousetrap is not enough. This has been another episode of Daring Dialogues, and I have been your host today, Shantae Charles. I hope I have said something today that was helpful for you as a person in business. I hope I have said something today that was helpful for you as a person who is looking to build wealth personally and for your family. I will be back on Sunday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be giving you part 3 of our teaching series on Jesus, our superior. If I don't see you Sunday, I hope I will see you on Monday. Remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness, so please go out today and be light. If you're interested in becoming a regular sponsor and partner, you can go to patreon.com/daring dialogues and sign up for a subscription. Over there on Monday, I will be doing some readathons, and the patrons who are signed up will have access to those readathons from the life of Martin Luther King. Take care and God bless.